For the next couple hours, we've got two amazing guys on the line. We're going to pick up here in just a second. Christopher Oscar and Doug Hecker, they have an independent film they put out called Project Censored, the movie. Many documentary films give people important information about what is wrong with society, but they often, in most cases, fail to offer a solution. Project Censored, the movie, explores and publicizes censorship in our society by exposing important stories that the public should be aware of, but are not. Project Censored is a media watchdog group and is the solution to corporate media's failure to give the American public real news and information. Without any further delay, let's go ahead and get the guys on the phone. Doug, are you there? Hello, Doug.
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Okay, let's see if we can go ahead and pick up Christopher. Christopher, are you there? Hello, Chris.
Hello? Yep, right here. How you doing?
We're doing real good, guys. I've got you both on the line. I'd like to thank you both in advance for taking time to join us, and welcome to Fringe Radio.
Well, thank you very much, pal. Appreciate it.
Why don't I let you guys start off for our listeners that don't know about your project and your group and what you do? Why don't I let you guys do some talking for a while and give us a little bit of a backstory and how things came to be and how this all kind of came together for you both?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll let Doug start on that, too, because he's a former student of Project Censored back in, what, like 1996, Doug?
Correct. Yeah. I was a student at Sonoma State University in the communications program with an emphasis on journalism. I was a writer for the student newspaper there at Sonoma State University, The Star. Went on to become the editor of the newspaper, and then enrolled in the class Project Censored, which at the time Peter Phillips was the director. Peter took over from the former director who actually started the program, Carl Jensen, and this program has been around for about 40 years. Carl Jensen started the program because when the whole Watergate scandal happened, he was quite shocked and surprised that Nixon got elected, with that whole scandal. And so he started looking into alternative media and realized that there was a lot of news, alternative news, that was not being given to the American public via, mainstream corporate media. Your typical ABC, NBC, CBS, nowadays Fox and CNN and MSNBC and all that good stuff. That's more of a propaganda machine. They just scratch the surface on some stories, but usually they give us what Carl Jensen coined junk food news. The sensationalistic stories for ratings and, eyeballs to advertisers and all that good stuff. So Carl Jensen started this out as a small little media research program at Sonoma State University. He actually started the communications program there. And Sonoma State University, for those of you who don't know where it's at, it's a small liberal arts college. Now it's about 8,000 students. It's in Roanoke Park, California. It's about 45, maybe an hour north of San Francisco, in the wine country in Sonoma County. And anyhow, so he started this program, Project Censored, and it really was more of a media research program within the class, and they started publishing leaflets and things like that. And then it just kept gaining traction and getting more attention. And by the early 90s, they published their first book. And since then, every year they've got an annual book that comes out with the top 25 censored stories that they feel should have gotten significant media coverage and either were underreported stories or stories that just weren't reported at all. And it goes through a huge vetting process. And the really cool thing is the students are the ones that do a lot of the research on stories that are nominated by, folks like yourself or people in the academic world, people in the business world, somebody who, may have stumbled across a story and realize that, hey, this is something that Project Censored, is right up their alley.
Right.
Right. And so the students will research the stories and vet the stories and make sure that they're, actual stories that either were underreported or weren't reported at all, and have some substantial what's the word I'm looking for? Some substantial newsworthiness that they should have been covered, and it's something that it's the public's right to know, and we should be informed citizens so that we can make decisions based on accurate information and not propagandistic information. And anyhow, Peter Phillips took over when Carl Jensen stepped down, and he was the director for I think well over a decade, and he was my professor when I took the course. And my story was published. I took the course in 1996, and my story came out in the 97 edition, and the story that I researched and did a synopsis on. And then flash forward to, about 10 years later, Christopher and I both met through business. We're both in real estate. Christopher at the time was in real estate advertising, and I was on broker tour on one week in his town. And broker tour, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, is basically an open house for realtors. They do it every week, and you get to go out and see what the inventory is like, so that you might be able to find a match for one of your clients, and just
right.
So you have an idea of what the inventory is. Anyhow, I was at my listing, and Christopher came by, wanted to introduce himself because he was actually in real estate advertising for the local newspaper in Sonoma, the Sonoma Index-Tribune. And Sonoma is a great little town in the heart of the wine country, and it's probably a half an hour away from Sonoma State University. And Christopher comes walking through the door and introduces himself and says, "Hey, I'm Christopher Oscar with the Sonoma Index-Tribune. I'm the advertising manager, and just wanted to introduce myself and see if you have any advertising needs for your listing here in Sonoma." And I said, "Oh, wow, the Index-Tribune." I said, "You guys used to print our newspaper." And he kind of looked at me with a little bit of bewilderment and said, "What paper are you talking about?" I said, "Well, when I was a student..."
Hey, Doug, I got to stop you just for a second. We got to take a quick break for our other stations that are here tonight with us. Our guests tonight, we're so honored to have on the show Doug Hecker, Christopher Oscar. They're gonna be with us for the next couple hours. They got a lot to say. We've got a lot to listen to, and want to hear your thoughts. You're listening to Fringe Radio. You can find us on the web at fringeradioshow.com. Again, it's an honor to have both of these gentlemen here tonight. And we're back on the other side. Stick around. We've got a lot to cover. All right, everybody, we're back. Our guests tonight, Christopher Oscar, Doug Hecker. We're going to talk about their project, Project Censored, the movie. Again, guys, thank you so much for giving us some time this evening.
You're welcome.
Our pleasure, yeah. Thank you.
So go ahead, Doug. Pick back up again.
Okay, so anyhow, Christopher, introduced himself, and I said, "Yeah, you guys used to publish our paper," and I told him it was, I was the editor of the student newspaper at Sonoma State, the Star, and his company, the Sonoma Index-Tribune, was a local in-house publisher, and they printed our paper for us, and then delivered it, and then of course we would, distribute the newspaper on campus and whatnot. And Christopher says to me, "Oh, you went to Sonoma State University?" And I said, "Yeah, I did. I was a comms major and, wrote for the paper and everything." And he says, "Are you familiar with Project Censored?" And I said, "Familiar, yes. I took the course, and I have a story published in the 1997, annual edition of the book." And I'll let Christopher pick up.
Well, I told Doug, I said, "I'm taking Project Censored. I'm going to turn it into a documentary film." And I just said it with total conviction because just earlier that morning I kind of had this insight. Don't know where it came from. I was just taking a shower and just hit me in the head. I went to school for investigative journalism, but I also took film classes, and I always wanted to make a movie. I didn't know what. I had been told about Project Censored by a Vedic astrologist back in around 1999, and when she described it to me, it totally resonated. She said there was something in my chart that spoke to fighting for the rights of others, truth-seeking, social justice, and well, that's what I did in school when I was working at the college newspaper. The stories I wrote were uncovering things that were really getting the heads of the school actually pretty upset. But it just was a drive I had. I felt it was my reason for being. I had to do this. And so when she started to describe when I was in California, this astrologist who's great, her name's Betty Tim, she started to describe to me Project Censored, and she said, there's something in your chart that looks like it would resonate with this. And I said, man, that is totally me. I went out, picked up the book that year, and every year thereafter, that became like my Christmas present to family and friends. You know, I would buy a copy of it. I'd tell everybody about it. But I didn't know what exactly my part was going to be with it until 2007 when I had this insight. And it was clear as day. I just saw it, done. Project Censored as a documentary film, premiered at the Sonoma International Film Festival. I mean, I even saw being up on stage collecting the awards, the whole 9 yards. And I sat there in this incredible feeling of this total insight, of almost being there years ahead of me. And I just said, okay, wait, hold on here. What do I need to make this come true, right?
Right.
And so I set an intention right there. And I said, if I could find somebody who's connected to the class, then together we could pitch this idea to the professor and get the rights to turn this into a documentary film. And I kid you not, Pat, that was it. All of a sudden I'm out doing my job, like Doug said. I'm selling real estate advertising to the local realtors and realtors who have properties for sale. I go walking into that home that Doug had for sale in Sonoma. And what I noticed was right away before I went in, I said, you know, this realtor's from a different town than me. I don't know him. He doesn't know me. So I kind of got myself together before I went in there. I got my media kits. I got my business cards. I got my newspapers. I put them under my arm. You know, I had to get ready. He didn't know me. This wasn't like, you know, hey, Dan, hey, Tom, hey, Harry. It was, okay, this guy, Doug, doesn't know me. And that was such an incredible experience, walking in there and just extending my hand. Hey, Christopher Oscar, Real Estate Advertising, Sonoma Index Tribune. And Doug saying, you know, Frank around Petaluma, and then saying, hey, you guys used to print my paper. I mean, just like Doug was just saying, you know. And I'm just so, what do you mean paper? And when he said he used to, you know, be the editor at Sonoma State University, the Sonoma Star, and I just, you know, Project Censored, and he knew it, and was published in the book, and I just said it with conviction. We're going to make this into a documentary film. We probably met, a week after that, Doug, something like that? We sat down.
Yeah, it was about a week after that.
About a week after that, we sat down, and it was so great. You know, Doug and I are sitting across from each other at this restaurant in Sonoma, and he says, you know what we need to do? He says, we need to get to the professor and pitch this idea. And I just looked at him. I said, hey, man, that's why you're here. You know, in my mind's eye, I'm thinking, this is what the universe did. He brought Doug Hecker here. And it was like having a brother that I never met before. We just, the whole way.
It all clicked.
Oh, man, so smooth. I mean, just the flow, right? You know, everything about it. Just emailing Noam Chomsky and having Noam Chomsky respond back saying, yeah, sure, when would you like to do the interview? You know, reaching out to Howard Zinn, you know, and having an interview with Howard Zinn before he passed away. And we go on and on and on. It's been an incredible journey, and we've really awakened so many people.
So now, Project Censored, it's a group. I mean, it's an organization that's still intact today, correct?
Correct.
And kind of, go ahead.
Yeah, and what they did was, at the time when I was a student, and, you know, for years after, it was sort of attached to Sonoma State University. And Mickey Huff, he's the current director. He's a professor over at Diablo Valley College, which is not far from Sonoma State, maybe an hour away over in the East Bay. He is now the director because Peter Phillips stepped down from that. But Peter is the president of the Media Freedom Foundation, which now oversees Project Censored. They kind of wanted to cut ties with Sonoma State because they didn't want to feel that there was any kind of conflict of interest with Sonoma State. Peter still teaches there, and he still teaches Project Censored, but the class is no longer under the guise of Sonoma State. It's under the Media Freedom Foundation. There's a board of, you know, they've got a board and all that good stuff. And, you know, again, that way there's really no conflict of interest within Sonoma State University. So Project Censored, the organization, they're a nonprofit. They're their own entity, and Chris and I are separate from them, but we work hand in hand with them. And we did our film as an independent project, you know, independent of Project Censored, the organization. But those guys were instrumental. I mean, Mickey Huff, the current director, Peter Phillips, the former director, even Carl Jensen, you know, they're all in our film. Andy Lee Roth, he's the associate director. We interviewed a bunch of students. So, you know, it was a collaborative effort, but Chris and I are our own entity. Aside from Project Censored, the nonprofit organization.
So let's talk a little bit about Project Censored, and what I'd like to talk to you guys tonight, and we can talk anything, of course, is really its effect. If I can just digress a little bit, I feel so honored in that I've been doing this show. I'm in we're in our 5th year of doing this show, my wife and I. She's taken a little hiatus from it. Of course, we talk about all the fringy stuff, whether it's ufology, cryptozoology. I mean, we go all over the gamut, everything from UFOs to serial killers to missing airplanes. But we feel so honored because we're able to do this on an independent radio station. And the importance of independent radio, and the importance we're picked up by a shortwave broadcaster, Global 24 Radio. We're able to get out and talk about these subjects that mass media and big media won't even let you address.
Correct.
And again, we love doing what we're doing, and all I can do is put a little pitch in and say that people need to look at more of the independent stations and more independency and kind of get everybody's opinion, if you will.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree more. The independent radio stations, media outlets, newspapers, those are really where people should be, and a lot are getting their news and information. With the younger generation, traditional print media and even news stations are kind of obsolete. The younger generation, they get their news from the internet.
Right.
And a lot of it comes from independent sources. So people have been, awakened with this sort of newfound media sensation for independent news and distribution of that, because they can kind of see through the propagandistic message that corporate mainstream media continues to distribute to, the population of America. Again, sensationalistic news, junk food news, the Kardashians, the Tiger Woods, the shooting on the corner, all the high-speed chases, all that stuff that just takes airspace and really doesn't have any kind of positive or informative what's the word I'm looking for?
A drive, if you will.
Drive, exactly. It's propaganda, and it's meant to distract the American public. And people, unfortunately, they do flock to that sensationalistic type of news because it's so prevalent.
The people that have seen your movie and the students that follow Project Censored, obviously it's teaching them to be open-minded and to be able to look in different directions, I would assume. And not always take for granted what we hear. I think people in general in the world, whether it's religious views, what have you, and probably with what we do, with the type of program that we're doing, and I'd like to touch base on that a little bit tonight too, is the whole thing of UFOs and people seeing things flying in the air and some of these kind of fringy things that mainstream media, they totally shy away from. And yet hundreds of millions of people see, quite a few out of the ordinary type things on a daily basis, and they have been for years. And we're big media outlets just laugh it off and almost make fools out of people. But again, people are starting to step up and saying, hey, what I heard is maybe not right, or maybe I don't agree with that, or I know what I saw. I'm not crazy.
Right. Yeah. I would tend to agree with that, whether it's UFOs or the Twin Towers coming down. There's a lot of unanswered questions around 9/11. Oftentimes Christopher and I will ask people, are you aware of Building 7?
Right.
And a lot of people have no clue on what Building 7 is. In fact, last year, Christopher and I went to his hometown of New Jersey to show our film to family, friends, colleagues of his from back in New Jersey. And it was interesting, the gentleman that was driving us from the airport to our destination, he was a New Yorker. He's been in New York his whole life, and I asked him, he started talking about the Twin Towers and, the beams of light coming up from where they once were. And I asked him, he's a local New Yorker, and I asked him if he was aware of Building 7, and he had no clue.
Right.
He didn't know. What are you talking about, Building 7? And I explained to him, well, it was a 47-story building across the street from the Twin Towers, and it came down pancake style in its own footprint, and there was, had a little bit of fire damage, but there was no real damage to that building that should have caused it to come down. So, yeah,
no plane hit it, right? No plane hit that building.
Correct. No plane hit that building. And like I said, it had some fire damage and some blown-out windows.
Right.
But
what I would almost call, and I don't know if you guys agree with me, what I would almost call were no more than garbage can type fires burning on random floors.
Right.
That's right. Correct. Yeah, when you hear in the voice of the firefighters up on the floors, and they're radioing back saying, "Hey, we got this. We can contain this."
Right.
And then what? With less than a minute later, the whole thing goes down. It's
right.
Well, it's interesting too. I'll never forget that day, like most of us won't. But I remember, I mean, for the most part, I think a lot of people, when they got home from work or if they stayed home from work, you pretty much parked yourself on the couch and turned on the news.
Right.
And of course, early on, because of the horrificness of this act, I think a lot of things, no matter whether you were watching Fox, NBC, ABC, quite a bit of stuff came out. And then later on, so much of it was censored. I remember with Building 7, a couple of firefighters running down the street and police officers saying, "Get back! Get back! They're going to pull it down." That was on the. I remember that as clear as day. I'm not crazy. And then that stuff was refuted. That nothing was ever said like that.
Right. Right. Well, there are a few good documentary films out there on that subject, and they discuss that too, where the term "pull it" was used, and that's a term that's used in demolitions when they're going to pull a building and demolish it pancake style in its own footprint. And one of those films, it's a really good film. There's many renditions of it. Is Loose Change.
Yes.
I urge all your listeners to check that out. There's another great one called In Plain Sight, and plane is spelled like an airplane, Plane, and there are so many unanswered questions and facts that are brought up in those films that, if that stuff was released to the public via mass media, Fox, MSNBC, all that, like all the rest of the garbage that they give us instead of factual-based information that's in these films, I think the American people would be up in arms.
Well, and I agree. And what I find so interesting, guys, is that, the minute somebody comes out, like with In Plain Sight or Loose Change, or another person that we're trying to get on the show, a little eccentric, I'll go out and say it, but is Dr. Judy Wood. If you follow any of her work, there's a lot of people with this whole 9/11 thing. There's just some strange things that have happened, and right away, all they do is, the media then portrays those individuals as maybe it's an Archie Bunker term, but as communists, as non-Americans, and as conspiracy theorists.
Correct.
And like with Building 7, I don't care what anybody says. There is no reason there is no reason for that building to come down. And I'm not an architect or anything like that. It's sickening to think of anything else.
Yeah, and there's a lot of factual based information that that's the first time. Well, actually, the Twin Towers, when they were actually designed because they were so tall to withstand the impact of a 747 airplane.
Exactly.
And
guys, we got to take a quick station break for our other stations. Tonight, our guests, Christopher Oscar and Doug Hecker, are here. We're talking about all kinds of interesting stuff. Stick around. We've got a lot more to cover. Fringe Radio. Check us out at fringeradioshow.com. We'll be right back. With filmmakers Christopher Oscar and Doug Hecker. Again, guys, thank you so much for giving up some time on your Saturday night.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
The whole, I have not seen your movie. I need to take a look at it. Just things have been a little crazy the past couple weeks for me. Does it touch on the 9/11 subject?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was just going to say, films like they have so much of an impact. After 9/11, I saw that Fahrenheit 9/11, Michael Moore, and I thought, after seeing that I had all the answers, and I was talking to my good friend Mike Poomer up in New York, and he said to me, hey, you know what? You're close, but you need to check out Loose Change. That's the film that Doug was talking about. And I said, what are you talking about? This thing's pretty clear. It's those guys, these bad guys. They got on a plane, they did this thing, and you know what? We're going to go get them. And I really owe a lot to him for really course-correcting me there and saying, no, you're directing your energy the wrong place, man. You got to check this out. And when I saw that Loose Change movie, being an investigative journalism major like I was, the way they just detailed and got into it, and I just said, oh my God, what have I been doing? What have I been saying? What have I been thinking? And that was such a wake-up for me in 2001, such a wake-up for me right there. And so, eventually making the film, and we talk about it in there. We had so much footage. Obviously, we couldn't fit it all into a 65-minute movie, which you can get and download online right off Project Censored the Movie's website or on yekra.com. What happened is, we have so much footage. We put as much as we could. But outtakes. We have so much more that we could say about it, but we do touch upon it in the film, definitely.
Well, it's one of those subjects that was just early on. It was kind of taken for what it was, and again, now more and more people are starting to come forward. People even, and I don't remember the names of a lot of these individuals. My apologies, but people that saw things came forward, and they're no longer with us. They died of uncertain medical causes just immediately after some of the things they reported to the press and some of the stuff that went public. I think it's I think it's a horrific thing what happened. I think I know there's some people that talk about laser beams and holograms and stuff. I don't think there was anything like that because we all saw it happen.
Right.
But it would surely be a shameful thing if I think everybody wants to believe that the powers to be have the best things and have the best in mind for all of us. But if that was truly some sort of call it an inside job or whatever, it's pretty disgusting when you think about it.
Well, and all these wars that we're going into were all based on that.
Right.
So when you look at cost of war, and there's a lot of different websites that you can go to see how much money the top CEOs of the different military contractors are making. I mean, it's a total scam. You get on the news where they're fighting about, we need to stop giving out food stamps to these people on welfare, and, this is where all our money, and they have everyone hating the poor. And the reality is the biggest welfare recipients are these military contractors. That's our tax money. No one's talking about that.
Right.
Instead, they go ahead and they say, we've got to go invade this other country, and then they'll go ahead and bring on a former general. Now, here's the piece, right? This is what we talk about with this media manipulation and everything. Will they bring on this other general who agrees with the commentator, yes, this is why we need to go? Well, all they say underneath his name is that he's some former general. If you were to flip that card and see where he's working now at either Halliburton, Lockheed Martin, or Boeing, or one of these companies that's about to get the military contract to go to this war, I think that's the piece that we need to tell the American people. A lot of people are still fixated on corporate media to get all their news, and they think what they're getting is the real facts. They're not. And I think that's what we're doing. We're waking up so many people by introducing the film.
Yeah, we talk about, sort of the revolving door, companies like Monsanto, where they have people that maybe at one point were executives or worked at the FDA, and now they, got something passed for Monsanto that shouldn't have. There's, for instance, over in Europe, they don't allow any of Monsanto's GMO in any of their food or products. Mm-hmm. And yet we have them over here, and, there's this revolving door of executives who maybe either were at Monsanto or now are at the FDA or vice versa. And there's just so much conflict of interest. And there's a lot of conflict of interest going on right now with fracking. and things, and that's not being talked about. So this is what we're trying to show the American public is, hey, seek alternative media. Don't just buy the story that corporate mainstream media is giving to you.
Right.
You know, turn off not just Fox News, turn off CNN and CNNBC, MSNBC, ABC. I mean, these are all the big companies that, you know, really what they care about are ratings and eyeballs to advertisers, and they're selling a product. And, you know, most of the news that's on those stations is not real news. It's speculation. It's opinion-based news, and it's not substantial, and it's bad for America.
Yeah. Well, and you know, just recently here, a couple of months ago, right before Thanksgiving, I saw a show. I don't know what station it was on, but it was talking. It was an interview. It was an independent group that interviewed a bunch of foreign reporters, English-speaking foreign reporters, and how the foreign reporters have really no respect for a lot of the American reporters because they say, you know, the stories just flip-flop so much back and forth.
Right.
As I said, we shortwave radio was such a big thing for so long. You listen to some of the news that comes out of these other countries, and you get a totally different twist on it. It went away for a while. Now it's starting to come back again, which I think is a good thing. And I think the internet is good. Some stuff I'm not real favorable. I think
Right.
I think Facebook and some of the social media, when it started out, it was pretty pure and to the point, and now it's nothing more than about making money and controlling things. It's sadly some of the big social media outlets are now now they're getting kind of trampled with nothing more than money making and control.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, again, it kind of goes back to that whole distraction piece. You know, keep the public distracted. Every once in a while, we'll give them a story so that they think we're doing our job. But really, it's about distraction. And you know, with that distraction comes a lot of laws that are passed unbeknownst to the American public. Things that if people were paying attention to, they would have said, "Are you crazy? How are they passing these laws and these bills?" But you know, unfortunately, Americans are distracted not only by misinformation and disinformation, but you know, all the infotainment. You know, what we call junk food news,
Right.
the Kardashians. You know,
Yeah.
all that good stuff.
Enough to make you sick.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, we're not saying don't be entertained. I mean,
Sure.
movies are great, and you know, every once in a while a reality show. But you know, also it's your civic duty to become aware and make yourself aware and make conscious decisions when you're voting. I mean, I think more people vote for American Idol than they do for the president. And
Right.
there's just we can go into that topic too, the two-party system, which is a joke. I really call it a one-party system because there's really no difference between the two parties. Again, Chris talks about that in our film. That's that whole divide and conquer.
Yeah.
You know, and when you can do that, which they've done masterfully, you know, over decades of propaganda, they've divided our nation and they pit, the right against the left, and nothing gets done.
Right.
Except for what those in power want to get done. You know, the rich keep getting richer, the poor keep getting more poor. There's really no middle class anymore, and the income gap is just incredible. What's going on, in the United States.
Right. You're either what I seem to hear from so many people is you're either doing great or you're doing terrible, and there's nothing in between anymore. Years ago, it was a little bit different. There was more common ground, but it is sad. And your mention about votes and stuff like that. Just to digress a little bit more, something that I follow, and again, this is just my opinion. I follow this whole gun control thing. I find so interesting because of so many different stances and opinions and stuff. Of course, I have my own and my own beliefs, what I believe in. But some of these laws that get passed, something I found was quite interesting is something they call a twilight vote. where essentially you can get a group of lawmakers together, and basically what they do is they ramrod this thing just in at the last minute, and it's kind of gotten that twilight vote name to it because people want to go. These guys, they're done for the day. They've been there all day. They want to go home, and at the end of the day, they're putting laws into effect that. They just wanted to close the session and be done with it, and really didn't care about what substance was underneath. And I think people do need to stand up, and they do need to care about these things.
Right, exactly. And I'll just say something too, Pat. I mean, like Doug was mentioning about, people, you want to get entertained, watch some good entertainment. Right. That's cool. And then there's this piece where it's like, well, every so often in history, there's a time where we all really need to get together, stand up, and fight for what's right, and make a big stand, make a big difference, make a big change. And I think we're on one of those verges of history right now. And that's why, I'll often say to people, are you paying attention? Do you know what's happening out there? You know what's going on? I mean, right now, it just seems to be that the upper 1% or 0.01%, they're having it's just like a land grab for them. All the money is being hoarded. Natural resources are being hoarded. And people are still kicking back watching American Idol. And we're saying, wait, do you realize what this planet's going to look like in 20 years or maybe less? Or, do you realize that this is important now to get up? The whole bread and circus thing, it's like, come on, people. Like, there's a time to take to the streets, and there's a time to really protest. There's a time to get out, support whoever you think should be in office, like a third party, someone else, rather than this two-party system. I mean, there's so much going on that we're saying, wake up. And the way we see it is, you can have a film that's going to have a big impact, okay? A lot of people, and they're going to look at it and say, that was great. I feel inspired to take action, okay? These two guys did it. Doug and I, we were able to do it. They're regular dads. They have full-time jobs. They coach soccer, mountain biking, baseball, whatever. We're busy, but we dedicated 6 years of our lives and met every Monday to make this a reality. We did. Right. So we hope when people see the film that they're inspired to also take some sort of action to make this a better place. Because we're all in this together. We got to do this, and that's kind of the piece where we're going with this. When we look at a film that can make a difference, this film being that it's with Project Censored, okay, based on the Project Censored class, now you've got something here. A class that started about 40 years ago in Sonoma is now in 30 different campuses, okay? That's where we're going to start to see some change. We want to see a campus, a Project-Censored class at every university and campus, because now you've got thousands and thousands of students going through every semester, taking a class, getting credit for it, being inspired to follow their passion, if it's journalism, investigation, humanities, anything about caring for the planet. It's all there. Because Project Censored is always uncovering every story that we should get that we're not getting. And then, they're telling their friends, they're telling their families. So think about that. All of the students who are out there, when we interviewed some of these students and we were talking to them and I'd hear them speak, the passion that would come out of them, that what they would be saying, how they really didn't have a clue what was going on. Next thing you know, they have this total awakening, and I think that's where the real movement's going to come to make a better place, make this a better place. So that's kind of where we're really pushing. The intention with the film is to take the curtain off what corporate mainstream media is really doing and who's behind the scenes. Also to show, hey, we did this, you can do this. Get out there and do something. And the other piece is Project Censored. And look at the great work Carl Jensen, Peter Phillips, Mickey Huff, Andy Lee Roth, everyone, Nolan Higgins, everyone who's involved in it. And what they continue to do is inspire students to critically look at the media, right? Critically question, where's the source? Where is this coming from? Who's the owner of the station? I want to know why I'm being directed to pay attention to Kardashians BHAGs. You know what I mean? What's going on really? Right, anytime something big like that happens, something's going on. I remember when Thomas Drake, whistleblower for the NSA, was having a press conference, and he had a whistleblower explaining everything, what was really going on, why we were in the war in Iraq, what's going on. And he's facing 30 years at the time for espionage, right? And he's up there saying, this is my last, goodbye, everybody, just for doing what I think is what I should do as a citizen of America, tell the people the truth. A friend of mine comes, picks me up. There's this guy, Jack, he rents one of the places that my family owns. And then he comes, picks me up for lunch, and I'm just shooken up, Thomas Drake, oh my God, this guy doing what's right for the country is going to go to jail, And I just remember Jack picks me up. I jump in his car and I look at him. I go, can you believe what's going on? And he says to me, yeah, I can't believe it. And I said, yeah, what's going on? He goes, yeah. And he says to me, yeah, he says, Arnold Schwarzenegger's having a love child. And I said, wait, what did you just say? And he says, Arnold's having a love child. Why? What are you talking about? And I said, oh, my God, are you telling me that's what's on all the corporate mainstream media right now? And he says, yeah, every channel, they're talking to this person, that, the housekeeper, this. And I said, so that's what's the big distraction piece while Thomas Drake is over here telling the whole world, well, I thought he was telling, I guess he was just talking to me and whoever else was listening to Democracy Now! That day. And that's the piece that we got to really break through, right?
Right, exactly. Well, and again, it's just getting people to just getting these younger people to at least take a look at things and don't take everything for granted. Don't take it all on hearsay. Go out and do a little bit of digging, guys. We got to take a speaking of news, we got to take a news break. Our guests tonight, Doug Hecker and Christopher Oscar, are here. We're talking about their movie. We've got a lot of questions that were sent in for you guys. Can we keep you for another go around?
Let's go.
Sure.
All right, sounds good. We're going to take a quick break, let them get a little something to drink, and we'll be back on the other side. You're listening to Fringe Radio. Check us out on the web at www.fringeradioshow.com.